This is Metrosource Minis, the official podcast of Metrosource Magazine and home of short-form interviews with your favorite personalities from the LGBTQ world and beyond. Quick, fun, and informative. It's Metrosource on the go. Out and proud since 1990. Well, hello. This is Metrosource Minis. I'm your host, lead writer for Metrosource, and avid podcaster, Alexander Rodriguez. Today, we celebrate a little COVID music with a Sondheim celebration with performer Travis Moser. In his attempt to fulfill an unquenchable need for attention, don't we all? Cabaret, concert, and recording artist Travis Moser has packed houses and won acclaim for his solo shows in New York City and around the country. He has celebrated and performed shows devoted to Linda Ronstandt and the music of Rodgers and Hart. He's performed at the famed Metropolitan Room, Joe's Pub, Club Cumming, Birdland, the Laurie Beechman Theatre, Don't Tell Mama, the Duplex, and of course the legendary Feinstein's at 54 Below, where he has recorded live albums of his performances. He has been seen in the regional productions of Jekyll and Hyde, West Side Story, Into the Woods, The Mystery of Edwin, Drood, and Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and he's been featured soloist in Disney and more. And his latest project, recorded during COVID, is a quieter version of Travis with an unplugged celebration of the music of Stephen Sondheim titled So Many People, the Stephen Sondheim Sessions. We featured him on Metrosource.com. Please welcome Travis Moser.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I just have to know, why Stephen Sondheim?
I noticed that during the pandemic, during quarantine, when everything got shut down, I was listening to different music, trying to find songs that kind of was representing in my mind when I was going for a run or a walk or whatever, that was representing kind of how I was feeling, different moods with friends, with family, with politics, and a lot of times, and just like getting through each day. And I noticed that a lot of the songs that were coming up for me were either the lyrics or the songs themselves of Stephen Sondheim. And so I started thinking of an idea of kind of putting together a song cycle of songs that kind of represented from start to finish how I was feeling about various things during quarantine, during the first, like, say, 6 or 7 months of quarantine. And so in my mind, I kind of was thinking of these songs, then putting them together in order of kind of how I was feeling and where I was in the, pandiquar of it all. And that's kind of, where it came from. It was just that those were the lyrics and the songs that were kind of speaking to me about my feelings during the quarantine.
Well, COVID has certainly been a reflective time for us. And what I love as a musical theater buff myself and as a Sondheim aficionado, I love that you just didn't do, what we would expect from like a best of Stephen Sondheim, where it's all the well-known songs. You include some lesser known songs, which I was like, oh yeah, that song. And it kind of took me back to kind of restudy his music and look at his lyrics again. So I want your opinion as a fellow musical theater buff. Do you think with all of the new modern sounds on Broadway that Stephen Sondheim's music and his works are in danger of being brushed back into like the dusty vaults of musical theater?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so ultimately, because I think that the lyrics and the music themselves are so raw and honest, and they were so ahead of their time when they originally came out in the shows and the musicals that they were from. And so I think that honesty and that like rawness, like they were considered like, almost like depressing at the time that they came out, because they weren't Oklahoma, they weren't that kind of thing. So I think that aspect of it will make them kind of, stay. But, the thing that, and I think you and I talked about is kind of like the American Idol belting of Broadway now, and it doesn't lend itself so much to Sondheim's music, because it's all about the feelings, getting the idea across, as opposed to kind of showing how well you can sing. But ultimately, I think that, I've been seeing, I did, stripped down versions of Sondheim, but I've been seeing, Sondheim reinterpreted in so many different ways through, like Billy Porter's recent Broadway solo album, and all kinds of different people that are doing reinterpretations. I don't think there's any particular wrong way to do it. It depends on your voice and how you perform and whatnot. So I do think that they'll kind of stand the test of time. I mean, we're still, right before lockdown, we were talking about, the Imelda Staunton Gypsy, transferring to Broadway from London. And there's always talk of a revival of one of Stephen Sondheim's shows. So I think that we're going to find new ways of doing them, like whenever the Sweeney Todd with Patti LuPone and everyone playing the instruments of the John Doyle came around. I think we're gonna find new ways of doing it. And because the lyrics are so, such a gut punch and really are, like I said, raw and honest, I think that they will ultimately always survive. It'll just be a way of trying to reinterpret and do it in a way that is going to appeal to contemporary audiences. But like I said, I've been seeing so many interpretations of different songs. And that's another reason why I kind of wanted to do this in a more stripped down kind of way, because I think we've seen the kind of thing we're seeing now are all these, totally different interpretations, like in different, musical styles and whatnot. So I think that we've done a lot of that. So I was looking more to strip it down to its bare bones of, the music and the lyrics. So I do think that it'll stick around. It'll just be a evolution.
In my mind, he's kind of a modern day Shakespeare, where the language, people say, oh my God, his lyrics are so much. And as a performer, we know, I mean, you did Into the Woods, you had to memorize that fast, your fault. And it's like, oh my God, there's so many words.
Exactly.
But really, just like the language of Shakespeare, it's kind of flowery, but it has so much meaning. And it's constantly, even in today's age, being looked at again and reinterpreted. And it's funny that we're going to be celebrating the 30th anniversary of Assassins, which we know is Stephen Sondheim's controversial piece. And they're getting together some of the original cast members. And that show in particular, I mean, talking about and almost glorifying the assassination attempts on our president. And then we come out of this administration and into a new administration where we're talking about the roles of presidents and how people are reacting and how people are incited to do certain things. It's all fresh again. And so just like you said, this musical has relevance. And not only is the music just beautiful, but it's like a definite comment as to what we're going through as a nation. Now, you have performed Jack and Into the Woods. And we know all of our friends have done Into the Woods a million times. We've done Into the Woods a million times. I mean, we always have to go see a production like every month when it's like, oh, okay. We've sat through that show how many times? We've listened to the recording how many times? But playing Jack, how did you make the role your own? Especially, like I said, when we've seen it presented so many times and we kind of know what audiences expect and what we even expect ourselves as an actor. What's that creative process for you in taking on such a well-known role?
Yeah, I think that it's just a matter of, I mean, as simple as it sounds, it's just coming from your perspective. I mean, like, coming, especially, Jack isn't written like obviously as like a queer character, but coming from, he seems kind of isolated. He seems kind of, like he doesn't fit in. And I think that's part of it, but I think you can take like, you can take that from your life as a queer person and kind of use that. And also sometimes I think it's been done, not in a bad way, just a different interpretation, is that he's kind of like, totally dumb. And the comedy comes from like how dumb he is. And I think that you can come from like a little bit of a place of like, like at that age, especially when you're younger, you're coming from a more naive place because you haven't seen the world. And that is, part of the song of Giant in the Sky, him realizing, growing up, they say it's, like a allegory for going through puberty or whatnot. But I think that if you come from like a more just like wide-eyed, like naive to the world, but actually Jack is pretty smart and he's trying to forge away from himself, I think it creates kind of a different version of the character. I think a lot of times when I see it done, it's like it's easy to go for the, he's just like a total idiot and a total like sometimes, like a kind of like straight guy bro, kind of stupid.
Yeah.
way of doing it. And I feel like if you come from like a queer perspective of like kind of being on the outside and just being totally new to a world that you know nothing about, as opposed to stupid, it's more just like you just haven't had the life experience. I think you can kind of make it your own.
I love that that perspective on it, because what I've always gotten from that character, and I hate when Into the Woods is presented as so one-dimensional. It's like, let's play everything for the laughs. You don't play everything for the laughs, because then you're gonna miss the meat of it. What I've always been drawn to that character is, I'm a mama's boy, and Jack is a mama's boy too. What I think is, he's motivated by so much love. His love for Milky White comes from a very sweet, sincere place, and then he goes through all this process to help his mom, with money and how to better their lives together. And he loves his mom so much, and so when he loses her, I find that so devastating, and it's usually a point that's just kind of brushed aside. And so I see everything that he does comes from a place of love, and I do respond to that kind of queer sensibility that he comes from, where he is alone, and he has an attachment to his mom, and he likes pretty things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but to your point, that's exactly right, because it's like coming from that place of love, and kind of like that's where his like struggle comes from. He loves his mom. He loves where he is. He loves Milky White. Everything kind of comes from that place. And you're right. That kind of is like secondary. It's almost like he's so stupid that he stays here or does this or that or the other thing. But it's like, it really comes from his internal struggle comes from like wanting to stay with his mom, wanting Milky White, like not really understand it, not have experienced the world in this way. So yeah, I totally agree. And going back to your point about Assassins too, which was, I totally agree with that as well, because I think a lot of these Sondheim songs and shows were written to convey a certain thing at the time. But like, just like Assassins, like you were saying, that was a great point. It's like, they're so well written, and it is like Shakespeare, and you want to see other people interpreting these works just like Shakespeare. They take on a totally new meaning for our time with each different generation. So they're written for one thing, and they take on a totally other thing, and they're written in a way that they're not dated. They're just very kind of like general. So I think that's another reason. That was a really good point about Assassins and how that's fitting in with, kind of our current political landscape. So I think that's a great point, and another reason why they'll stick around.
And Travis, I want to talk about again, your interpretations. You have honored musicians, like I mentioned, Linda Ronstandt and Rodgers and Hart. You pay homage to them, but the music is still very much your own. I get your sense coming out from it. What are the most important factors a singer must remember when honoring a musician with a focus type shows? We've all sat through cabarets that have not been the best. So you coming from doing them successfully, what do you think singers really need to remember when presenting a one-person show?
Well, I think that you have to have kind of obviously like a through line of what you're trying to get across. Is it that you want to show like, for example, the Linda Ronstadt show, my goal was to show what a wide breadth of material and genres she covered, and all the things she did, and why she kept striving to do different things. So in that show in particular, my goal was to always come at it from your perspective. So don't try to sing it like Linda Ronstadt. Don't try to sing it like whoever. Sing it like you, bring you to it, bring new arrangements. I think when you're doing a solo show and you're trying to honor someone, by just doing the songs, and not trying to put your own spin on it, is the wrong thing to do. So for the Linda Ronstadt, for example, I wanted to create kind of cabaret Broadway type that fit my voice arrangements, that were new arrangements, new tempos, sing them in my style, but show the wide breadth of, what Linda Ronstadt had done, in terms of pop, rock, country, traditional Mexican songs, just, Broadway, Gilbert and Sullivan, and kind of taking all of those and coming at it from my perspective, how I sing, how my musical director that I work with does arrangements, but kind of giving a nod to them and showing the audience kind of what they're doing with stories along the way, but coming at it from your perspective and your voice, I think is the best way. Because you see a lot of those shows where they're trying to kind of imitate exactly Linda Ronstadt or Rodgers and Hart, music from that era. And to me, it's about, I want to show you something different in terms of these arrangements and the way I'm singing them, but I want to also honor them. So I'm not taking them, in a totally crazy direction, but I just want it to be different enough so that it's my stamp, but gives a nod to the person and then shows kind of like their life and their work. So I think just coming from you and making it different, like you're creating a brand new show of your own music, what you would do with it, what you would do with the arrangements, and then commenting on the artist. That's why I love people like Justin Vivian Bond. Whenever they're always doing like not tributes, but like kind of like covers of some of the songs that they love so much, and it's in their way. I'm seeing Justin Vivian Bond I'm seeing this person, Judy Collins, for example, through the lens of Justin Vivian Bond, and I think that's what can make a really great kind of interesting moment.
So let's talk about So Many People. Like we mentioned, it's kind of a stripped down version. It's you and a piano, not recorded in front of a live audience, which I love your albums that are, because it has this energy. We get to hear a little bit of your banter, and it has a totally different energy. Was this totally terrifying? Because it's very naked in a certain way. Was this terrifying to record, number one, and number two, to kind of release to the world?
Yeah, a little bit, just because it's like, because it's Sondheim, and the phrasing and the lyrics and everything. Not that all composers and lyricists aren't, you don't want to honor their work, but with Sondheim, there's an extra level of anxiety to honor the lyrics, because it's like poetry, it's like Shakespeare, it's like our modern day, like you said. And so there's that pressure of doing creating your own phrasing and doing the songs in your way, honoring the lyrics, getting his point across. There's always with singers, it's always like, you want to prove like that you're a good singer, or how good you sing, how high you can sing and whatnot. But with Sondheim, I think it's like really about serving the songs and what he's trying to say. It's a story and an idea. So it was, pretty scary, just because it was just me and piano in the studio. I was in the recording studio, and you want to make sure you're getting every single a and the right. You're wanting to get the phrasing right, so that the breath is in the right place, because he has a very specific way of talking and laying out what he wants to say. So that was scary. And then because it's so raw and vulnerable, and because we're in a time of quarantine when we're not really seeing anybody, and I can't perform live, I can't do these songs in front of an audience, it feels very like naked and vulnerable, and like you're kind of putting out something like a naked picture of yourself.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, exactly. With this music. So, stripping something down, especially with a composer lyricist like Sondheim, is always scary. And you feel like, I'm a fraud, I'm a fake, whenever you put something out like this, just because it is someone that's so lauded. And this year is his 90th birthday. So we saw the tribute kind of show towards the beginning of the pandemic. And, you just want to honor, him and what he does. And you don't, how judgmental everybody can be about his stuff. So,
yes,
it's definitely scary.
Well, it's funny because even he can be judgmental about his stuff as well. We joke about needing attention, and I'm right there with you. And there's nothing bad with that, especially if you admit it, and especially if you're putting out great content that people are responding to. There's no bad element to that, and being aware. But how has COVID played with that part of your psyche? We're not getting attention from audiences in front of us. How has that made you kind of adjust your thinking on performances, career, and even your personal life?
Yeah, just like everybody else, has been really, really tough. And it's so funny that you say that about everybody wants attention, especially if you're a performer, you're putting something out. It just is hilarious. I love to just like broadly, kind of joke about it. Cause we all love attention. And of course, I love, likes and attention and whatnot and performing, but it's funny to me that, whenever you see on social media, people that are putting out things, but in this faux, humble way. And to me, it's we're all doing the same thing. And so to me, it's funny. To me, it's funny to have kind of an alter ego that's totally like hungry for attention and whatnot. It's like, I just think that the being funny about it and being kind of like over the top about your need for attention can be really funny, because I just get really exhausted by the people that are pretending that they don't want attention, but they put an album out or they're in a show. It's like, so to me, it's like, during the pandemic, it's been really tough because, I work in theater as for, my job. And also, I'm a performer or recording artist. So there's a lot of performing, whether it's in front of, producer clients and meetings, whether it's in on a stage, that you don't get that. So it's like, I noticed myself like towards the beginning of the pandemic, like kind of like going nuts on Instagram or Instagram stories. It's like you need that connection. And it's not even so much about like all the time, like, look at me. It just is like, when you're a performer, somebody that's, I'm also an only child. So it's like
me too.
Are you really? I love
yes.
that. I love it. I love only children. But so it's like, like that validation, it's like, it to be like, for any performer or anybody who's doing anything creative, it's, in this kind of arena, it's so tough to just be locked in your apartment, especially in, I live in New York City. So, I live in a small apartment. You don't see anybody. It's just, it does wreak havoc on your, part of your identity is your voice, your performance, how you are in front of people and whatnot. And if that's all stripped away, it does make you think like, who am I? What am I? What am I offering to people? Because, I put a lot of stock on people being like, he's the singer, he's the performer, he does this. And if you take all of that away, it's like, it brings up a lot of questions about who you are, because, you don't have that. And I think a lot of people are asking who they are and whatnot, but it's a different level. I think if your identity is tied to being, a public person or a performer or a podcaster or whatever it is, when that's taken away, it does make you really question, like, if this was all taken away, who am I? What does it make me? So it does, it has wreaked havoc on the old psyche, I will say.
Well, and I totally agree with you, not to be dramatic or anything. I've taken, it's like, not how many podcast episodes or how many articles I've written am I leaving behind, but what legacy am I leaving behind for the people around me? What real legacy in terms of compassion, relationships, have I created, and will I leave behind, rather than just from a professional point of view? Okay, I have to know, what is your backstage ritual before a performance? Do you have like a certain steps that you have to do, or do you just kind of show up and enjoy it?
No.
What kind of backstage performer are you?
I'm filled to the brim with anxiety at all times. So I'm not the kind of performer that, like, I do shows with a lot of people. Like, there's a show called Love Bites that we do at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater. And, everybody, Justin Vivian Bond was actually in that, I think, one year, and Michael Musto and people like that, these gregarious type people and whatnot. And like, people are backstage, like this, that, and the other, like chit-chatting. I am someone that needs to be like totally focused. I don't want to chit-chat with you. I want to kind of be in my own little area. I don't really like to eat anything before I perform, some star. And I like to have little snacks or whatever. I have, I usually like, just because usually backstage, we don't have access to a bar if it's somewhere like that. So I always have a bottle of Makers, like a little bottle of Makers, and my Diet Coke. And I'm always like, getting my Diet Coke, pouring some of it out, and then putting some of the Makers mark in there. I always go on with like not always, but I like to go on with like a drink to just like loosen up, because my anxiety is so at a 10, and I'm like so focused on doing a good job and whatnot, that it's like, if I just leave myself to my own druthers, it's like I'm too in my head and whatnot. So it's like, I like to focus. I like to have a little drink, very, Strichian backstage. And then when I'm done, I can like relax, watch everybody else's performances. I love to go out and, watch everybody else. But beforehand, I like to like not talk to anybody, really not eat much before I perform, have a drink, focus on what I'm doing, trying to like, think of the lyrics, make sure I have those in order and whatnot, and just kind of pretend backstage that I'm this like free loving person that is into talking to everybody, and kind of like go in my own little corner, have my drink, and and get ready to go on stage.
I'm so with you there. I don't like people coming up to talk to me. I'm glad friends are there, but I don't want them coming backstage before the show. And an hour before, I have perfected it that I have it down to a science that it's 2 white wines before I hit the stage. Yeah. No less and no more. Because I'm relaxed, and then I can kind of, my head voice just kind of opens up, but any more, and then I'm sloshing around. And any less, then it just makes me anxious.
Right. That's the thing about like it being an anxious performer. Some people could just like love to just like come in 5 minutes before, go right on stage. I'm not that person. I like prepare too much. I'm like starting honey at noon, getting ready for the performance. It's actually crazy, but like you said, it's like after years and years of performing, you can perfect how much alcohol and when to drink it. And that's very
exactly important. Right.
I'm usually like one Makers and Diet a half an hour before I go on. And then if the order gets changed, you're basically screwed, because then you're like your whole thing is screwed up. But it's very important getting that timing down.
And another rule I have with myself is, before I used to try to like have all the sheet music and all the lyrics typed up so that they would be like right on the tip of my tongue. But I found that it would actually psych me out, and my brain would make me think that I had lost all the lyrics because I was trying to focus a half hour before. So an hour before, I don't even think about the music, and that's helped because I've hit the stage not remembering the first line because I psyched myself out.
You and I sound exactly alike in terms of like performing, because it's this level of anxiety where I'm almost doing like magical thinking of like, I have to do this at this time, and it's like, and it does get in your head, and then you like to your point, you're like over preparing to the point where you're like psyching yourself out.
That's exactly right.
Like, wait, I thought it was that. And then you're finding things that you didn't even think about before. And then you're like all in your head. It's crazy.
Yeah. But we know once you hit the stage, the magic happens. Okay. Exactly. We're going to play a little rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yes.
If you had to perform one song for Stephen Sondheim in his living room, what song would it be?
Probably What Can You Lose? Because I think that is one of his most underrated songs. It's not recorded a lot solo. I just think that that's one of his best songs. It's simple. Like a man or a woman can sing it. It was sung by both a man and a woman in the movie. I just think it's such a great song, and not one that he probably is stick up in auditions.
Yeah. What Sondheim character would you love to see a spin-off musical for?
Oh my God, that's such a great question. I think maybe Carlotta from Follies, because I'm So Here is one of my favorite songs of all time. And I'd love to see her trajectory, what she does, because she's one of those survivor performers. Like, we don't have them so much anymore. It's like, even though I'm not the biggest fan of her, like Marie Osmond, for example, is one of those survivors. She's done a variety show. She's on Broadway. Like these people that just like constantly do the next thing. And so to me, Carlotta would be, like, what's her next act? She'd be on QVC probably.
That's funny. What is a guilty pleasure song on your playlist? Doesn't have to be musical theater, but a song that you're so embarrassed by, but you love.
Let me think about that one. See, for me, I'm not one that subscribes too much to guilty pleasures. I think that like if something, like Fran Lebowitz said this recently in Pretend It's a City on Netflix, but it's like, if something gives you pleasure, there's so much harsh reality in the world. If something gives you pleasure, it's not guilty. It just is simply pleasure. I mean, I'm trying to think, like, what is it? Sometimes I think I'd be embarrassed, at my Spotify year-end list or whatever with like some days I'll get in a rabbit hole of listening to like bad musicals like Jekyll and Hyde or something. And I listen to like one song from every cast album, like in a row. And it makes me look like an absolute psychopath. So I might listen to like Deborah Cox, Someone Like You, Linda Eder, Someone Like You. Like I'm going down the list. And so if you look at
I do that too.
Yeah. And it's like, because I want to hear the differences. I want to hear.
Oh my God. Travis, I'm exactly. And if there's a remix of it, I'm sold. Like I'll own every single remix. Oh, that's so
someone's
funny.
gonna look at my Apple Music thing and they'll see like just Stalker. Like bad musical, like the ones that are considered quote unquote guilty pleasure musicals. Jekyll and Hyde's the first one that came to mind, but like, and you'll see like every version that's ever been recorded in a row, and it looks like I've been sitting in my room, like in a corner, like in Fatal Attraction, turning the light on and off, like rocking, listening to like these different versions over and over again.
Oh, I love it. And what would the name of the musical based on your life be?
Let's call it I'm Still Here.
Got it. Got it. I love it. All right, Travis, tell everybody where you want them to find you and follow you.
You can find me on Instagram at Trav James on Instagram. You can find me on my official website, travismoser.com. You can search for me. My albums, singles, whatnot are available on Apple Music, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you listen to music or purchase music, Amazon, and Twitter at TJ Moser.
I love it so much. And if I was going to, what's the first track that somebody that might not be familiar with Sondheim, what's the first track on So Many People, your latest album, that they should listen to first?
I think that the first song, Broadway Baby, is a great intro into Stephen Sondheim because it's one of his most accessible songs. I think one of the most like typical Broadway songs, but it has that slight Sondheim hard edge of somebody really pounding the pavement and it kind of not happening for them. And during this kind of COVID, I think we can all relate to really trying to make something happen and hoping and looking towards the future and just having that hope and faith that it's going to happen before it's even happened, whether it's getting out of the pandemic, whether it's getting a job. So I think that Broadway Baby, if you listen to that, the first song on the EP, that'll give you a great intro into Sondheim.
Travis, it has been a delight to chat with you. It's a delight to listen to your music, and I cannot wait to see what the future has.
Thank you so much for having me. I love all of your shows, and I love meeting Mother Only Child.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. Once COVID is over, we have a lot. We're going to get together. We're going to be the ladies who lunch, and we're just going to dish.
I love it.
Thank you, Travis, so much.
Thank you.
That has been my chat with Travis Moser. You can read my in-depth interview with him at metrosource.com. And that is your episode. I'm your host, Alexander Rodriguez. You can find me on Instagram at Alexander is on air. Until next time, stay true and do you, boo. That has been another MetroSource Mini. Like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast player, and check out the latest issue of MetroSource magazine on newsstands or online at metrosource.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram at MetroSource, and on Twitter at MetroSourceMag. Until next time, stay fabulous.